And also, we want to say good morning to our special guest, author Charlene Willis. Good morning, Charlene.
Good morning. How are you both doing?
Good morning, Charlene. Thank you so much for joining the Black Press of America.
Of course, I'm happy to be here, although I might have to crash your convention, ending it with Shaka Khan.
Absolutely. Well, you know you're welcome to not only crash it, but come on and spend some time with us. We really support your work and your sense of resilience. I think is something that we need to be affirmed more and more in our community.
Great, thank you. And I couldn't agree more. Resilience has always been important, but never more so than now. And certainly over my last few years of life, if not my whole life, I think.
Well, Charlene, and that leads us nicely into You Are Enough, reclaiming your career and your life with purpose, passion, and unapologetic authenticity. Tell us about that, Charlene.
Well, that's a mouthful, isn't it? That title. The book is, it's part memoir, it's part motivational guide, and part kind of how to. And, the way the book came about is I had been in the corporate world for 30 plus years. About 30 years into it, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I went through my requisite treatment, the standard of care. And when I finished, which was 7 months, I had taken off work that time. I went back to work. And when I went back to work, I realized that one, I was not the person that I was before I had been diagnosed. And two, I didn't fit into that life anymore. And I started to just do some deep thinking of why might that be? And then I realized that, I reached success, but I had spent, 30 plus years turning myself inside out to be enough for the executives and the companies that I worked for. And, and I thought, this is crazy that now I've fought for 33 years for this career. I don't fit into it. And at the crux of the whole thing was that I'd spent so much time turning myself into whoever they said I needed to be that I didn't know who I was. And so I said, after doing this deep thinking and going through the cancer diagnosis and the treatment, which ended up frankly being about a 3.5 to 4 year treatment, at the crux of it was the fact that I didn't believe that I was enough. And so I did some digging, and I said, I am enough. And I started thinking about the lessons that I had learned in building my career. And I took those career lessons and put them in the book and also applied those lessons as I was going through my cancer treatment. And if nothing else, I want everyone out there, especially every Black little girl, woman, individual professional, to know you are enough. You don't have to be who they tell you are, right? Just because someone says you're something does not mean that you have to accept it. So in the book, I lay out my strategies for building a career, in an authentic way by being yourself and making deliberate decisions, which I think are extremely important. If you want to play the game, but know that you're doing it and not be led to it because you have to, because someone said you have to look this way, dress this way, act this way.
Yeah, and Charlene, you talk about being yourself. For Black women in corporate America, especially Black women who has some power, isn't it sometimes challenging to be yourself?
Well, yes, it's challenging often because, just because you have a seat at the table doesn't mean that people are comfortable with you being there. So you spend an enormous amount of time making other people comfortable with you being in their space. And that's hard because you can't do your best work when you're worried about that. And, but at some point you have to get to the point where you say, enough is enough. It's time for me to be me. And yes, it's lonely because you're often the one and only, and people who are threatened by it will say, oh, well, it's tokenism. And I say, no, it's called being qualified. And you realize that, hey, it's my job is to be the trailblazer for the people who come behind me. If there can be one Black woman, then there can be 2 and 3 and 4, and that's what makes it worth it.
You know, Charlene, we know that Malcolm X famously said the most respected person in America is the Black woman. But we also know that the hardest working, the most resilient person in the world is a Black woman. You talked about overcoming breast cancer. We hear so many stories of Black women overcoming. What was it for you where you said, as just to keep with your theme, that enough is enough, and you took control of everything?
Well, I tell you, it was when I was coming out of my breast cancer journey. I was depressed. And the thing about being depressed after you beat an illness is that nobody gives you permission to be depressed or to not be happy. Everyone says you should be singing from the rooftops. And so people would ask me, you know, hey, how are you doing? It's so great. You must be so happy. And I would think, no, I'm not, because I woke up and I don't know who I am and I don't fit into the life I had. So, you know, you really have to, for me, I really had to dig deep. As I say, you know, cancer changed me, so I had to change my world. And, you know, the strength, you know, it's no secret, as you said, Stacey, you know, Black women, we are strong. You know, most all of us, if not all of us, we come from strong stock. We will not be defeated. And we figure it out. You know, my mother used to have this saying, and she passed away more than 20 years ago. She used to have this saying that, you know, 1, God will provide. 2, you make your own way, right? And 3, you know, by the grace of God, there go I. You know, and when I reached back and really leaned in even more, I never leaned out of it, but leaned even more into my faith, I just started to really understand my purpose for being here, my purpose for having cancer. And what I mean by that is I believe that if something negative happens to you, you have a responsibility to turn it into something positive for someone else. Yeah. And so that's what I've tried to do with my book and with my professional speaking.
Wow. Dr. Chavis?
Yes, Charlene, thank you so much. I listened very carefully to your testimony and to your affirmation and to your resilience. And I think not only will African-American women, but all women and all people will benefit. Yeah. Tell us how people can get your book, Enough is Enough. And I just want to say a comment. As I listen to you, I recall our work at the United Nations. The most fundamental human right is the right to self-determination, knowing oneself, embracing oneself, and expressing oneself. And certainly you have found that out. And I just want to point out to you, Charlene, that in Judaism, in Christianity, and Islam, there's this theological principle that trial and tribulation is for purification. Sometimes our trials and our tribulations don't necessarily make us weaker. They can, in fact, make us stronger if we draw strength from our adversities.
Absolutely. You know, and I would say one of the things that I learned going through my cancer battle and after is that, you know, there is strength in vulnerability, right? There is strength in being able to reach out and ask for help. And, you know, prior to that, when you're building a career and you're the one and only, the last thing you want to do is show weakness. And when I had cancer, I had no choice but to show vulnerability. And it turned me into an even stronger person. And, you know, while I don't want to say I'm thankful for having had cancer, but I'm thankful for the growth experience. But to answer your question, Dr. Chavis, how can people get in touch with me? On my website, which is charlenewheelis.biz. The book, You Are Enough, is available online on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And other places that books are sold, I'm finding out as well. And then I'm pretty active on both Facebook and Twitter, and especially LinkedIn. And so I encourage anyone. Of course, I would love for you to buy the book, but for me, it's about the message. It's about helping people grow in a healthy, confident way. So if you have a question or something, or you just need some advice, don't hesitate to hit me up on LinkedIn because I will be there for you.
Wow. Charlene,
Mhm.
book must have been, well, let me not put words in your mouth. How cathartic was writing this book for you?
Well, it was more cathartic than I thought because I didn't write the book for catharsis. I started writing the book, quite frankly, because once I realized I was tired and that I'd spent so much time turning myself inside out, I got a little angry, right? And I thought, okay, I need to do something so that other people don't go through the same road. So that's why I started writing the book. As I got into writing it, then it became a very cathartic process because I was able to take a step back and look at what I'd been through. And there were times where the book was hard to write because I promised to be very authentic in the book, and so I talk about some of the or a lot of the slights and being disregarded in the corporate office, not getting the attention, even though you're doing great work, right? And it was hard to relive those stories, but it was so important to do that. And in the end, when I wrote the last two sentences of my book are, the thing that I lean on the most is that I am a child of the Most High God, and I am enough. And when I wrote those last two lines and ended the book, that was probably the most cathartic, calming, peaceful feeling I may have ever had.
Yeah, and isn't that, Dr. Chavis, a fantastic message, not just for women and young women, but for all, and especially as we go through different times, the pandemic and other challenges that people of color have faced really all of our lives. Dr. Chavis, I know you can speak to that as well.
Well, thank you. And Charlene, again, we really support you, and we hope that millions of people will tune into your message and the truth that you are speaking, the truth that you're writing, the truth that you are sharing. That's what the Black Press does. We record our journeys. We become the depository of our history and our culture. And we just wish you well, Charlene. And we know that so many people can benefit. And we thank you for sharing your journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much for letting me share the journey. I feel so passionate about the message, about the purpose, and really, especially now with everything that's going on, we as women, as people of color, we really have to think about how we're going to walk in this world after everything we've been through over the last year and a half. And to quote the fantastic, Dr. Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. And so I'm really hopeful that everyone, regardless of your gender, your race, your color, I'm hoping everybody will do better.
Yeah, absolutely. And Charlene, just a couple more things for you. One, at what point, was there a point in the book where you got to where it became really challenging for you to write?
Oh gosh, there were so many points that were challenging for me. Certainly you hear one of the first challenges that people have is when they lose their hair, right? And the people tend to think that women freak out when they lose their hair because of vanity, and it's not a vanity issue. What happens when you lose your hair from cancer is that you don't recognize yourself anymore. So you start to lose your identity. And I had gotten to a point where around the house where there were pictures of me, I put them all face down because I couldn't stand looking at what I used to look like. So that was certainly hard, reliving that loss of identity. And then also, let's be realistic. Cancer changes you. As I say, I don't have all my original equipment anymore. Right. And so those things are hard to grasp, and especially as a woman, when so much of you is tied up, in your womanhood, and I have a wonderful husband and two children. And, I spent a lot of time trying to help my girls understand that I wasn't going to die. And I spent a lot of time really questioning, is my husband going to be here? And will he feel the same way when this is all over? Because shockingly, as I did research, not more than just about 50% of women who go through a long breast cancer battle end up going through that battle without their spouse because their spouse leaves. And so you have the fear of the cancer coming back, which happens to people even before they finish treatment. You have the fear that you're not the same anymore, that your spouse isn't going to want you anymore. And I mean, it messes with your mind so much. And so reliving that in writing the book was both scary because I had to acknowledge it again, but at the same time, it was empowering because in acknowledging it, I also acknowledged that I got through it.
Wow, what an amazing story. Charlene, also, did you find yourself when you were battling cancer, along with what you just described, but did you also find yourself as the one doing the encouraging instead of receiving the encouragement?
Oh my gosh, that happens so much to people who are sick, whether it's cancer or something else, is that you have friends come by and they're visiting, and at some point you realize, oh my gosh, they think they're coming by to see me, but what they're actually doing is coming by so that I can encourage them and make sure that they know I'm not going to die. And it was exhausting. And so I was fortunate enough that once I realized this, my friends and my family kind of rallied around and said, hey, my daughters were like, hey, if you want an update on mom, you text me. My husband was, text Charlene, you can call her, but we're not having any visitors. Because people would come to visit. I would give most all the energy I had trying to help them feel better. And then when they left, I was exhausted and I would be in bed for 2 days. And so I realized that I had to choose me. And now I tell people, if you have someone, someone who's going through cancer or a difficult time, shoot them a text, call them, let them know that you're thinking about them. Don't expect a response, right? I do that all the time with people. I have a number of people I know now who are going through cancer that I met because of my book or other things. And I just send them a text every day. It's a heart, it's a smile, thinking of you, praying for you. That's all people need. But please, if you have someone who's going through something, don't take away their energy because they need it to get better.
Yeah, and I bet a part of that is you saying too, if you're well, you haven't had these problems before, don't say I know how you feel. Right?
Oh my gosh, yes. That one, and bring up the latest research, right? A lot of people say, well, I read that the research they're doing X, Y, and Z. Trust me, if somebody's been diagnosed with something, they have Googled that to death, right? And they know everything that is out there. And so for people to come to you, and I know they mean well, but after a while, people can make you feel like you're the reason you got cancer, right? They'll tell you, oh, you worked too much, and stress is really can contribute to it. Well, yes, I do know that now. Thank you. So just be supportive, but not judgmental.
Absolutely. The book is You Are Enough, Reclaiming Your Career and Your Life with Purpose, Passion, and Unapologetic Authenticity. It is available, Charlene Willis.biz is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the sellers. It is from Mascot Books, and it's new. So check it out there. You Are Enough by Charlene Willis. Dr. Chavis, your closing thoughts?
Well, thank you again, Charlene, on behalf of the Black Press. And we were certainly going to promote You Are Enough, your great book. And as we listen to you, one thing that comes across is your strong faith. The Black church and the Black press are inextricably linked. The Black press grew out of the Black church. And your faith is just so a statement that people in times are hard, that you have to rely on what God gives you, and certain your faith has brought you to this point, and we thank you for sharing your journey and your faith.
Thank you. You all are so lovely to have me here. So thank you very much. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And to your audience, if I haven't said it enough, I just want you to know you are enough.
Well, you heard it there from Charlene Willis. You are enough. And don't forget.